I scrolled past the engagement post 3 times before the tag registered. There it was, glowing on my phone screen at 11:47 p.m. Nola Varrow, my fiancé of 8 months, posed with Damon Vossel, her so-called male best friend. The ring was visible, catching the golden hour lighting she obsessed over. The caption read, "He asked, I said forever." Hearts and fire emojis flooded the comments already. My face appeared nowhere in the 9-photo carousel. My grandmother's ring, the one I'd proposed with last Christmas, sat perfectly positioned on Damon's finger. I'm Finn Harlow, and I run a small architecture firm in this mid-sized New England town that feels like it stepped out of a Stephen King novel. Not the supernatural parts, just the everyone knows everyone's business parts. I design houses for people who want character without the drafts, modern conveniences wrapped in classic New England charm. It's honest work that pays well enough to support Nola's lifestyle brand aspirations, or supported them anyway. The engagement post had 12,000 likes in 20 minutes. Comments poured in from her 847,000 followers. Finally! You two are perfect together. When's the wedding? I recognized some of the usernames, brands, influencers, people whose approval translated directly into dollars for Nola's carefully curated existence. I screenshot everything, every angle, every comment, every heart emoji that felt like a small knife between my ribs. Then I kept scrolling, looking for any trace of our actual relationship in her recent posts. Nothing. I'd been systematically erased from her digital life over the past 6 weeks, replaced by carefully staged shots with Damon that suggested intimacy without confirmation. The front door opened at 12:23 a.m. Nola's heels clicked across the hardwood floors. I'd refinished myself, each step echoing through the house like a countdown. She appeared in the doorway of our bedroom, still glowing from whatever event she'd attended. Her phone was already in her hand, probably checking engagement metrics on the post that had just rewritten our entire relationship. "You're awake," she said, not looking up from her screen. "Hard to sleep when your engagement announcement is trending," I replied, holding up my phone. She glanced at it, then shrugged with the casual indifference she might show a stranger asking for directions. "Your face would have ruined my Instagram aesthetic. Damon photographs better. It's just content, Finn." Just content. 8 months of planning a future together, reduced to a content strategy decision. "The ring's a nice touch," I said. "My grandmother's ring. It fits him better anyway." She kissed my cheek with the mechanical affection of someone completing a checklist item, then climbed into bed. Within 10 minutes, her breathing had settled into sleep. I stayed awake until sunrise, planning. Nola's empire was more fragile than it appeared. I'd watched her build it over the past 3 years, back when we met at a coffee shop where she was staging a candid work session for her then modest following of 50,000. She'd been authentic then, or at least more authentic than the carefully manufactured person sleeping next to me. The numbers told the real story. Following, 847,000. Monthly income from brand partnerships, $34,000. Sponsored posts required authentic lifestyle content, real relationships, genuine moments, the kind of believable intimacy that made followers trust her product recommendations. Her entire livelihood depended on maintaining the image of a life she'd constructed from borrowed pieces and strategic omissions. I made coffee and opened my laptop. Nola's content calendar was synced to our shared Google account, a remnant from when she'd wanted my input on her posting schedule. The engagement announcement was part of a larger strategy. 3 clothing brands, a jewelry company, and a lifestyle subscription service had campaigns planned around her relationship milestone. The projected revenue was $67,000 over the next 2 months. Damon Vossel had been appearing in her content for 2 years, introduced initially as her photographer and creative collaborator. The evolution was subtle, background figure to frequent feature to implied romantic interest. Comments speculated constantly about their relationship status. She never corrected them, Every ambiguous post drove engagement higher. I was real. Damon was profitable. I pulled up the analytics dashboard Nola had shown me during better times when she'd wanted to share her excitement about growing metrics. The data was revealing. Posts featuring Damon averaged 23% higher engagement than solo content. Posts with me performed 15% below her baseline. The algorithm had spoken, and Nola had listened. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli Martinez, my best friend and the mechanic who kept my truck running, despite my tendency to ignore maintenance schedules. "Saw the post, man. You okay?" I typed back. "Define okay." "Want to grab breakfast? I've got thoughts." An hour later, we sat in Murphy's Diner, the kind of place where coffee comes in heavy ceramic mugs and the waitress knows everyone's order. Eli studied me across the table with the expression he usually reserved for particularly troubling engine problems. "So she just replaced you?" he asked. "Upgraded me," I corrected. "Better aesthetic, higher engagement, more profitable brand alignment." "That's the most messed up thing I've ever heard, and I once had a customer try to pay me in cryptocurrency he mined himself." I showed him the post analytics on my phone. "Look at the numbers. She's not wrong from a business perspective. Damon tests better with her audience." "You're talking about your fiancé like she's a focus group." "Because that's what she is now." I sipped my coffee, thinking about the woman who used to laugh at my terrible architecture jokes, who'd helped me pick out paint colors for the office, who'd once told me my hands were her favorite feature because they built things that lasted. The person I proposed to doesn't exist anymore. This is just content optimization. Eli leaned back in his booth. "So, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to optimize back." That afternoon, while Nola attended a brand event downtown, I conducted an archaeological dig through our shared digital life. She'd been careless with passwords, trusting in a way that felt quaint now. Her laptop was still logged into everything. The primary Instagram account told the story she wanted public consumption to see. But buried in her browser history, I found something more interesting. A second Instagram account, private, with exactly 127 followers. The username was a combination of her middle name and birth year that only someone who'd helped her set up bank accounts would recognize. This secret account documented a completely different life. Photos of Nola with another man. Neither me nor Damon. Someone I'd never seen before, dark-haired and expensive-looking, the kind of person who wore watches that cost more than my truck. The captions referenced weekend trips to Portland, Boston, New York. Weekends I'd thought she spent at brand events and influencer conferences. The timeline was damning. While she'd been systematically removing me from her public narrative and positioning Damon as her romantic interest, she'd been conducting an actual relationship with this third man. The engagement post wasn't just a business decision, it was cover for a more complex deception. I screenshot everything: dates, locations, captions that referenced inside jokes and shared experiences. The metadata showed the photos were taken over the past 4 months, overlapping with our engagement period. While I'd been planning our future, she'd been planning my replacement. Multiple replacements, each serving different purposes in her carefully constructed ecosystem. My phone rang. Mira Kelrin, Nola's sister and social media manager, appeared on the caller ID. "Finn, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "About what?" "About the situation with yesterday's post. There's been some feedback." "Feedback?" "Questions about your absence from recent content. Some followers are asking where you've been. It's creating narrative confusion." I almost laughed. Narrative confusion. As if our relationship was a television show that needed better continuity editing. "Maybe you should have considered that before erasing me from her timeline," I said. "Look, I know this is awkward, but the engagement announcement tested really well. The algorithm is responding positively. We can't walk it back now without damaging her credibility." "Her credibility?" The brand partnerships depend on consistent storytelling. If followers think she's being dishonest about her relationship status, it undermines everything. She is being dishonest about her relationship status. Silence stretched across the connection. When Mira spoke again, her voice carried the careful tone of someone navigating a minefield. "What do you want, Finn?" "I want the truth, all of it. The real engagement, the fake engagement, and whatever's happening in those private account photos with mystery man number 3. Another pause. Longer this time. "I don't know what you're talking about." The private Instagram, username Nola Varrow 1993, 127 followers, 4 months of weekend trips with someone who definitely isn't me or Damon. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Nola returned home at 6 p.m. with shopping bags from 3 different boutiques and the satisfied expression of someone whose day had gone according to plan. She arranged her purchases on the kitchen counter like a small retail display, photographing each item for potential content use. "Good event?" I asked from the doorway. "Amazing. 3 new brand connections and a possible collaboration with a lifestyle magazine." She held up a cream-colored sweater. "This is for the fall campaign with Meridian Clothing. Very New England autumn, very authentic." "Speaking of authentic," Mira called today, her hands stilled on the sweater. "Oh?" She mentioned some narrative confusion about yesterday's post. Followers asking questions. People always ask questions. It drives engagement. She also mentioned the importance of consistent storytelling, how brand partnerships depend on credibility. Nola finally looked at me directly. "Where are you going with this?" "I found your other account." The color drained from her face with remarkable efficiency. She set down the sweater and gripped the counter edge. "I don't know what you mean." "Nola Varrow 1993, private account. The weekend trips with your actual boyfriend while you were publicly positioning Damon as your romantic interest and privately planning to phase me out entirely." She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again like someone trying to remember lines for a play she hadn't rehearsed. "It's not what you think. What I think is that you've been running 3 separate relationships simultaneously. Me as the real-life placeholder, Damon as the profitable public face, and Mystery Man as your actual romantic interest. It's actually impressive from a logistical standpoint. Finn, please. I'm curious about the timeline. When exactly were you planning to break up with me? Before or after the fall campaign with Meridian Clothing?" She sank into one of the kitchen chairs I'd built from reclaimed barn wood, back when she'd wanted handmade furniture for the authentic, rustic aesthetic. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen?" "The engagement post was just a test. Mira wanted to see how the audience responded to Damon as a permanent fixture. If the metrics supported it, we were going to gradually transition the narrative." "And me?" "You would have been phased out, gently. A mutual decision to focus on our careers. While you continued seeing the actual boyfriend. James is different. He's not for public consumption. He values privacy." James. Finally, a name for mystery man number 3. I filed it away with everything else. "So I was the practice boyfriend, Damon is the Instagram boyfriend, and James is the real boyfriend." "You're oversimplifying." "Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you created a content strategy that required 3 different men to play 3 different roles in your manufactured life." She buried her face in her hands. "The pressure is constant, Finn. Every post, every story, every interaction gets analyzed. The algorithm punishes inconsistency. The audience demands authenticity, but only accepts a specific version of authenticity. I got trapped trying to give everyone what they wanted. What about what I wanted? What did you want? A real relationship with a real person, not a supporting role in someone else's performance." She looked up at me with something that might have been genuine emotion if I could still trust anything about her. "I never meant to hurt you." "You didn't hurt me, Nola. You erased me. There's a difference. That night, I compiled everything: screenshots, timelines, metadata, financial records from our joint account that showed payments to Damon for photography services that coincided with their romantic content. The evidence painted a picture of systematic deception spanning months. But the most damning discovery came from Nola's email account. A thread with Mira and someone named Derek Vaughn from Meridian Clothing discussing the relationship transition strategy. The emails were clinical in their analysis of audience response to different romantic narratives. They'd A/B tested my replacement. One email from Derek stood out. The current boyfriend doesn't align with our brand aesthetic. Too blue-collar, not aspirational enough for our target demographic. The photographer presents better for luxury lifestyle positioning. I'd been focus grouped out of my own relationship. At 2 a.m., I started making phone calls, not to lawyers or private investigators, but to someone much more dangerous to an influencer's carefully constructed world: the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC guidelines for influencer marketing are specific about disclosure requirements. Sponsored content must be clearly identified. Relationships that affect product recommendations must be transparent. Fake romantic partnerships designed to sell lifestyle products constitute consumer fraud. I spent 3 hours documenting violations. The engagement post had been used to promote jewelry, clothing, and wedding planning services without proper disclosure. The manufactured relationship with Damon had been monetized across dozens of sponsored posts. The secondary relationship with James, who I'd discovered through additional research was a marketing executive at a competing lifestyle brand, created undisclosed conflicts of interest. By sunrise, I'd filed a formal complaint with supporting evidence. The FTC moves slowly, but influencer fraud had become a priority enforcement area. Nola's empire was built on sand, and I'd just introduced water to the foundation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to meet. Today." "Damon," I typed back. "Murphy's Diner, 10 a.m. "This isn't a joke, Finn." "Neither am I." Damon arrived 15 minutes late, probably for dramatic effect. He'd styled himself for the meeting: artfully disheveled hair, expensive casual wear, the kind of calculated authenticity that photographed well. He slid into the booth across from me with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most interesting person in any room. "You're making a mistake," he said without preamble. "Which one?" "There have been several lately." "The FTC complaint," Mira told me. I raised an eyebrow. "Fast communication network you've got there." "Nola's career is built on trust with her audience. If that gets damaged, everyone suffers, including you." "How exactly do I suffer when someone else's fraudulent business model collapses?" "Joint assets, shared financial obligations. If her income disappears, you're both in trouble." He wasn't wrong about the financial entanglement. We'd bought the house together, shared credit cards, built a life that would require careful dismantling, but his assumption that I hadn't considered the consequences was insulting. "You're assuming I want to preserve what we built together." "You're going to destroy your own life out of spite?" "I'm going to tell the truth and let the consequences sort themselves out." Novel concept, I know. Damon leaned forward, his photographer's eye probably calculating angles and lighting even during confrontation. "What do you want? Money? Credit in her posts? A gradual exit strategy that preserves everyone's dignity?" "I want her to experience the same thing she put me through: public humiliation. The sudden discovery that the life you thought you were living was actually a performance for someone else's benefit." "That's vindictive. That's proportional." He studied me with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. "You really loved her." "I loved who I thought she was. Turns out that person was just another content creation." The first sponsor pulled out on Thursday morning. Meridian Clothing sent a terse email citing brand misalignment and concerns about authenticity in partnership representation. They demanded return of all promotional products and canceled the fall campaign worth $23,000. Nola's panicked phone call woke me at 6:47 a.m. They're saying I violated disclosure requirements. They're threatening legal action if I don't return everything immediately. Did you violate disclosure requirements? That's not the point. Someone sent them screenshots, timelines, evidence of things they shouldn't have access to. What kind of things? Private conversations, internal planning documents, information that could only have come from someone with access to my accounts. I made coffee while she spiraled through increasingly desperate theories about corporate espionage and competitor sabotage. She never considered the obvious explanation that the person with the most access to her private information might be the same person she'd systematically betrayed. I need you to help me figure out who's doing this, she said. Why would I help you? Because we're still engaged. Because you still care about me. Because this affects both of us. Are we still engaged? Because your Instagram suggests otherwise. Silence stretched across the connection. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of genuine fear. Finn, if this continues, I could lose everything. All the partnerships, the following, the income, everything I've built. Welcome to my Tuesday night. That's different. How? You're not a public figure. Your reputation isn't your livelihood. My reputation is my livelihood. I run a business in a small town where everyone knows everyone. The difference is that I built my reputation on actually doing good work, not manufacturing a false persona. The second sponsor pulled out that afternoon, a jewelry company that had been planning a relationship milestone campaign around her engagement announcement. They cited the same concerns about authenticity and disclosure violations. By Friday, 2 more brands had suspended partnerships pending review of recent developments. Nola's monthly income had dropped by 60% in 3 days. Mira called me directly Friday evening. You need to stop this. Stop what? Whatever you're doing to sabotage Nola's partnerships. This is affecting her ability to support herself. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm documenting truth. You're destroying her career out of petty revenge. I'm revealing that her career was built on systematic deception. There's a difference. She made a mistake with the engagement post. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Mira. This was a calculated business decision that involved erasing me from my own relationship and replacing me with a more photogenic alternative. You have emails discussing the strategy. Another pause. Mira's silences were becoming predictable. What do you want? I want Nola to experience consequences for her choices. Real consequences that can't be managed with better lighting and strategic hashtags. And then what? You feel better and move on? Then she learns that other people aren't props in her content strategy. You're being vindictive. I'm being proportional. She treated me like a disposable asset in her business plan. Now she gets to experience being a disposable asset in someone else's plan. Whose plan? Mine. The weekend brought a cascade of disasters that even Mira's crisis management skills couldn't contain. Someone, definitely not me, officially, had created a comprehensive website documenting Nola's deceptive practices. Screenshots, timelines, financial records, and detailed analysis of FTC violations. The site was professionally designed, well-researched, and devastatingly thorough. It went viral Saturday morning. The Reddit post that launched it hit the front page within 4 hours. Influencer fakes engagement, replaces real fiancé with male best friend for better aesthetic. The comments section became a feeding frenzy of people sharing their own experiences with fake influencer content. Nola became a symbol of everything wrong with social media authenticity. Her follower count dropped by 127,000 over the weekend. Brand mentions disappeared. Comments on her recent posts shifted from admiration to accusations. The algorithm, sensing controversy, throttled her reach. Her carefully constructed empire was collapsing in real time. Sunday evening, she appeared at my office downtown. I was working late, partly because I had deadlines and partly because going home meant facing the wreckage of our shared life. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days, which was probably accurate. "Please," she said from the doorway, "make it stop." "Make what stop?" "The website, the Reddit posts, the documentation, all of it." "I don't control the internet, Nola. You control the information. You're the only person who had access to everything that's been released." I leaned back in my chair, studying her with the same analytical attention I gave structural problems in building projects. "Hypothetically, if I was responsible for documenting your business practices, why would I stop now?" "Because you got what you wanted. I've been humiliated. The partnerships are gone. My reputation is destroyed. You won. This isn't about winning. This is about consequences. What else do you want from me? I want you to understand what it feels like to have your reality rewritten by someone else without your consent, to discover that the life you thought you were living was actually a performance for someone else's benefit, to realize that the person you trusted most was systematically erasing you from your own story." She sank into the client chair across from my desk, the same chair where couples usually sat to discuss their dream home plans. "I understand. I get it. I made terrible choices and hurt you in ways I can't fix. But continuing this isn't going to make either of us feel better." "You're wrong about that. I feel significantly better than I did last Tuesday night." "Finn, please. I'm begging you." "Begging me to what? Pretend the past 4 months didn't happen? Go back to being your off-camera placeholder while you monetize fake relationships with other men? I'll make it right. I'll post the truth. I'll tell everyone about our real relationship." "Now you want to tell the truth? After your entire business model collapsed?" "I'll do whatever you want. Just please stop the documentation, stop the website, stop feeding information to people who want to destroy me." I opened my laptop and showed her the analytics dashboard for the documentation website. Traffic was approaching 2 million page views. The story had been picked up by mainstream media outlets. Her name was trending on 3 different social platforms. "It's too late to contain this, Nola. The internet has decided you're a symbol of influencer fraud. That's not something I can undo even if I wanted to." "You could try." "Why would I try?" "Because you loved me once. I loved someone who doesn't exist. I loved the person you were pretending to be before you decided I wasn't profitable enough to maintain the illusion." She started crying then, not the photogenic tears of her apology posts, but the ugly, desperate crying of someone watching their world collapse. I felt something that might have been sympathy if I could forget the spreadsheets where she'd calculated my replacement value. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said. "Yes, you did. You planned every step. The gradual erasure, the replacement narrative, the monetization strategy. You meant for all of it to happen exactly the way it happened. You just didn't plan for consequences. What happens now? Now you learn to live with the results of your choices, just like everyone else." She left without another word. Through my office window, I watched her walk to her car under the streetlights, no longer moving with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being photographed. She looked like what she was, someone whose carefully constructed reality had finally collided with truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. "Saw the news coverage. You okay?" I typed back, "Define okay. Want to grab a drink? I've got thoughts." Always. An hour later, we sat at Murphy's Bar, the evening version of the diner where this had all started. The bartender was someone I'd known since high school, the kind of small-town connection that made anonymity impossible, but also made genuine community possible. "So," Eli said, raising his beer, "you just took down a social media empire with spreadsheets and documentation." "I just told the truth with evidence to support it." "Same thing, different framing," he grinned. "Remind me never to get on your bad side. Just don't try to erase me from my own life and we'll be fine." "Deal." He grew serious. "But really, how are you doing with all this?" I considered the question. 3 weeks ago, I'd been planning a wedding with someone I thought I knew. Tonight, I was sitting in a bar while that same person's career collapsed under the weight of her own deceptions. I should have felt guilty or conflicted or at least uncertain about the proportionality of consequences. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: clarity. "I feel like myself again," I said, for the first time since she started treating me like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. That's either very healthy or very concerning. Probably both. My phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Nola's 37th message in 2 weeks. I didn't listen to it. I'd stopped listening after the 15th, when her voice had shifted from anger to bargaining to something resembling grief. The progression was predictable, the emotional manipulation transparent. "You going to listen to that?" Eli asked. "No point. I know what it says. Some variation of, 'I made a mistake, please answer, we can fix this.' But the mistake wasn't the engagement post or the fake relationship or even the systematic erasure. The mistake was thinking I'd never figure it out. And now she knows you figured it out. Now everyone knows I figured it out." We finished our drinks in comfortable silence. Outside, the small town that had witnessed the rise and fall of Nola's influencer empire continued its quiet existence. Tomorrow, people would go to work, have real conversations, build actual relationships without calculating engagement metrics or optimizing for algorithmic approval. I walked home through streets I'd known my entire life, past houses I'd helped design and renovate, through a community built on genuine connections rather than manufactured authenticity. The ring I'd given Nola, my grandmother's ring, was still in the pawn shop window downtown. I'd walked past it every day for 2 weeks without stopping. Tonight, I stopped. Through the glass, the ring looked smaller than I remembered, less significant. It was just a piece of jewelry now, not a symbol of promises or futures or carefully planned deceptions. Tomorrow, I'd buy it back. Not because I wanted to remember Nola, but because I wanted to remember my grandmother, who'd built a 50-year marriage on truth and commitment, and the radical idea that love meant choosing the same person every day, even when they weren't optimized for aesthetic appeal. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. I deleted it without listening and walked the rest of the way home through the quiet streets of a town where authenticity still meant something, where relationships were built on foundation deeper than engagement metrics, where consequences still followed choices with mathematical precision. The house felt different now, not like a shared space, but like my space, a place where I could exist without being edited or optimized or strategically positioned for someone else's narrative. I made coffee and opened my laptop to check the evening's analytics. The documentation website had reached 3 million page views. Nola's story was being shared across platforms, discussed in marketing classes, analyzed by business journalists as a case study in influencer fraud. She'd wanted to be famous. Mission accomplished. I closed the laptop and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in months. Outside, the small town settled into its nightly quiet, unchanged by the digital drama that had consumed the past few weeks. Tomorrow, there would be houses to design, relationships to build, and a life to live that didn't require performance or optimization or the careful management of other people's perceptions. For the first time in months, that felt like enough.